Hey there, welcome back to...
Here we see the writer in his natural environment.
What the hell?
The writer is a reclusive creature, often spending most days in his den where it rarely moves or eats.
I mean, yeah, that's true, but that's because I'm busy.
The writer is not known for being a social creature, instead choosing to spend time with imaginary characters.
Hey, now wait a second, I talk to people.
While the writer's characters are well developed, the writer himself is often unkempt and known for his poor hygiene.
Okay, that's it, get out.
Having detected an existential threat, the writer becomes hostile.
Stop narrating. Sorry about that. Welcome back to the Saved as Draft podcast, where I, Bradley Ramsey, talk to you about the craft of writing, what I'm working on, and why you should care. Everybody, welcome to episode 4. This is our 500 subscriber special. About a week ago, I received an email from Substack congratulating me on 100 subscribers. Now, think about that. This is our 500 subscriber special. In fact, we're over 500. I didn't look. I think it's close to 550 now. That's a lot of growth in a week. And I've worked in marketing for 6 years now, granted in a different industry, different, platform, all that good stuff. But that's still a lot of growth. I'm not complaining. I love it. I'm super excited. It's kind of crazy. My phone is blowing up nonstop all the time, every day. It's kind of sweet, actually, though, if I'm being honest. But it's a lot of growth, plain and simple. I feel like every time I do one of these episodes, my entire world has changed in some significant way. Or, the amount of subscribers, the amount of reads. Something has changed significantly every single week. I'm not used to how they say January has lasted like 60 days? Well, it feels like that, but in a good way for me, because so much has happened in this first month of 2025. But all that aside, wanted to celebrate this episode by highlighting some stories from my first few subscribers and share how I've made some absolutely incredible friends in this last month since I joined Substack. I want to say within the next couple of days. It'll be a month. So, little background here. It's no secret to those who know me or who have met me this month that my life has not been great the last couple of years. I'm not going to go into detail about it right now, but suffice to say I got knocked down pretty hard and stayed down for a while. However, I'm someone who always gets back up. In fact, the other day I was talking to my coworker Jen, a wonderful person who works on the marketing team with me, and she was saying that she admires how much I bounce back from these kind of things. She's noticed over the years that I've known her that, especially with work and stuff, when things get rough, yes, I, go down like anybody, but I get back up. And I do take pride in that. I'm resilient, you might say. Stubborn, others might say. But the fact of the matter is that you can knock me down all you want. I'm still going to get back up. So, all that being said, I'd like to feature 5 writers that have made a real impact on me since joining Substack. And in pretty much every case, I would consider these people dear friends, and I hope to be friends with them for as long as they'll have me. So let's go into the first one here. I have to mention Isabella Neshawat. I briefly mentioned her stories last week, which take a modern spin on Greek mythology, but this time I want to talk a bit more about the person behind the stories, as well as one of the stories themselves that I would highly recommend you check out. And again, this is all part of our 500 subscriber celebration. We'll go back to our regular shout-outs next week, most likely. Or if it's our 1,000 subscriber celebration, I guess I'll be doing this with 10 people. But in all seriousness, I don't remember exactly how Isabella and I started talking. I want to say it was because she reached out to me to ask if I could help editing one of her stories, one of the first ones. She's one of those writers that hasn't really published a lot of work online, and like most writers, she was worried that it wouldn't be well received, or worse, ignored. But like most writers, she was wrong, in the best way possible. Her work takes classical characters and stories from Greek mythology and reframes them in new settings, like I was saying, including our modern world. Do me a favor. Imagine if the gods were real from Greek mythology. Not only real, but they never died. How would you feel, watching the world move on without you? Well, you don't have to imagine, because this week I'm recommending Isabella's piece entitled Pantheon. It does come with a host of content warnings, so please check before reading, but if you're able to dive in, this piece is haunting, beautiful, and honestly, it's a sobering reminder of why immortality is not all it's cracked up to be. So, to Isabella, one of my first subscribers and someone I consider a dear friend, thank you for your support, for your friendship, and most of all, for your art. Next up, we have a writer who goes by Wild Nebula. The story of how I met Nebula is another funny one. You see, I'm not really somebody who uses Instagram or Threads a lot. Despite trying, I could never really find a lot of writers. The community's cool, but I never really connected with it. And so I just kind of let those two accounts, Instagram and Threads, do their thing. I post the newest stuff, new stories and poems, and then I leave. It's nothing crazy. Well, within the last month, I started to notice a little growth on Threads. I went from 100 subscribers to 500. Followers. Sorry, I'm on Substack so much I could say subscribers or everything now. But yeah, so it started to grow. And in that period of growth, I kept seeing likes coming in consistently from a writer named Wild Nebula. And I was like, oh, who's this? So I checked out her profile, followed her, obviously. And I was like, oh, she looks pretty cool. Interesting work, And I remember distinctly watching a video she posted that was Link from Zelda. And it was just using that little soundbite where he's like, hit, like that over and over again. And it was hilarious. I commented, I laughed, she laughed. It was great. But here's the thing. Even if I interact with a writer on any platform, I'm not really the kind of person who, pops into the DMs unless we discussed it or I need to tell them something. For example, I notice a typo and I'm not going to, put them on blast in the comments. So you can imagine my surprise when Nebula sent me a message on Instagram. And she was inviting me to a virtual orientation for a new immersive audio stories app called Audio Mazes. I was so happy for the invite and I was so appreciative that she thought of me. She and I were both on that call actually with several other writers, and it was awesome. If you get a chance, just look up the app Audio Mazes. I want to say it's either launched or about to launch, and they do have a page on their website to apply as an author. It sounds like that they're a small team and they're planning to grow quickly. I haven't heard back personally on my application, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. After it was all done, I had to thank Nebula, obviously, somehow, because I really appreciated it, and I love opportunities like that. So I reached out to her in the messages and I asked her if she needed me to edit anything or beta read something, and it turns out she did. Now here's the thing, I'm not going to reveal any details about her new project because that's hers to reveal. I'm not even sure if she's talked about it yet, but what I will say is that it's very, very, very good. I like it a lot so far. In fact, there's more for me to read this weekend, and I'm sorry, but it's for VIPs only, okay? So, sorry about that. Not sorry. But yeah, she's definitely a dear friend as well, someone that I'm extremely grateful to have met, and I love reading her work on her Substack, which I'll get into in just one second. But I have to tell you one more story involving her, and it was the other day. I think it was literally yesterday or the day before. Like I said, time's weird lately. But I told her just, in our conversations, I was like, man, I can't imagine a future where I'm not friends with all these new writers, yourself included. And her immediate response, she said, you won't have to. And that was awesome. Thought I'd tell that story. So I gotta say thank you to Nebula as well. And before we move on, I have to shout out that she released an excerpt from her upcoming book. The pre-orders open in March, and we'll do another shout out before those open so that we can, give everybody the link and stuff like that when it's up and live. But her book's coming out soon, and she posted an excerpt on her Substack along with an audio narration, and it's very, very, very good. If you're a fan of very, very chill, very soothing, very almost relaxing narration, obviously her excerpt has action and there's actually a fight scene in it that I won't spoil. But if you're into all of that, definitely check out the audio version. It's extremely well done. And also I need to shout out her new poem that came out yesterday. It's called Bone. It's a very unique piece with a cool flow, and I feel like I'm the only one that noticed this, but, I notice weird things. But the way the poem was written, the length of each line as you move through the poem had sort of this expanding and contracting pattern, and it really reminded me of breathing, like the poem itself was alive. Fantastic stuff. Definitely check it out. I will have the links in the show notes. Next up, I'm calling out an author named Mina Howell, and this is another early subscriber and an author I discovered on Substack. Her work is focused on what I would call eco-fiction, where it has an undertone meant to call attention to climate change and the fact that our planet is literally and figuratively on fire. My first piece I read from her was called Observing Oblivion. It's a short story told through the eyes of a doll that witnessed the downfall of civilization. Not only was it haunting and relevant, but using the doll as a vessel for the story was nothing short of brilliant. Mina also recently published an ebook for sale that you can find on her Substack, and her new story releasing sometime today has a sneak peek for our listeners here. She told me that it's about being trapped in a dream. I have some stories like that that actually happened, particularly one where I was a kid. I remember this vividly. And I was in my old house where I lived with my parents. I was in the bathroom, and there was this window that they had above the shower in the wall there, and it was barely big enough to squeeze through. I never actually tried to climb through it, but in the dream, the window was closing, and it had one of those cranks on it to open and close it. And I distinctly remember, for some reason in the dream, I had this idea in my head that if I don't get out that window before it closes, I'm going to be stuck in this dream forever. And so I remember, I don't remember how old I was, but I remember climbing out of the window and then waking up in my bed and being like, oh, thank God. And then I went back to sleep, and I was back in the bathroom, and the window was closing again. I don't remember much after that, but it was like the dream was like pulling me back in. Really scary stuff. Stay tuned for that story from Mina, and we will definitely put that in the show notes. Our final featured author for this week is V. Walker. V writes absolutely incredible poems, but more than that, she also has a poetry book and offers commissions. I recently purchased a poem from her to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of my girlfriend Sarah and I's relationship. The process was really simple. You fill out a questionnaire to give her your preferences and context that you want in the poem, and then you pay. She had the poem ready within a day or so, actually, and it was really fast and great quality. I only asked for one small change, and it was something that I didn't include in the questionnaire. So, honestly, amazing experience. And between us, I'm getting it framed as well. And if you're listening to this, Sarah, I appreciate the support, but it's supposed to be a surprise. I'm kidding. I already mentioned the idea to her, but she hasn't read the poem, so no matter what, it'll still be a surprise. And there's a reason why I had to bring up the whole framing it thing, because that's actually part of how V and I met. You see, I have a poetry collection I published this last week called Beauty in the Ending. It's about an omniscient being who visits dying worlds and writes poetry for them. I really love this collection, but it wasn't until I published it on Substack that it ever got any attention. V responded to my post about it on Threads and said it was so beautiful she wanted to frame one of the poems from the collection. I was blown away. In fact, I retweeted, rethreaded, whatever you want to call it, and it was just so funny. And people were like, wow, that's amazing. No one's ever said that about my poetry, kind of thing. So of course, when I found out V does commissions, I had to obviously tell her that I was going to frame it as a reference to how we met. So, you can find V on Substack and Ko-Fi, or Ko-fi, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, to order your own poem, which is very inexpensive, or you can get her book, also not expensive at all. Find links in the show notes. All right, next up is our This Week in Writing segment. Remember how I said every week the world changes? Well, guess what? This week we introduced a brand new one. The Realm of Devine is a world I created where magic and technology collide. In these stories, which combine elements of science fiction and fantasy, you can experience standalone stories that build out a larger world. If you're curious, check out The Tomb Where Marigolds Grow and A Soul Bound to Steal, as well as my upcoming story, Fate's Witness, to get acquainted with the world, and there's more on the way. It feels like this was forever ago, but my Choose Your Own Adventure also went up in the last week, if you can believe it. It's tricky because I used anchor links to allow readers to make choices, but those apparently don't work in the Substack app. Not my fault, but that means that I had to include instructions on where to scroll if you're using the app, or you would just get stuck not knowing where to go for any decision in the story. So, not ideal. Hoping they update that soon. I also launched my first few poems this week, and these have gotten a lot of reads, very popular. They range across different moods and genres. The aforementioned Beauty in the Ending is very popular, as is my flash fiction / poem called Ashes to Ashes. That second one is about two people who meet right as their planet's star goes supernova. It's a very heart-wrenching tale, but in my opinion, written very beautifully. Of course, I would think that I wrote it, but still, I worked very hard to make the language very compelling in that one, and a lot of people agree. But here's the thing. I can't choose between my stories, so I'd recommend all of them. Just, set aside some time. It's not like you got anything else to do, right? I'm kidding. On the short story front, we launched some horror. I say we all the time. I don't know why. This is just me doing this. I launched some horror and some slice of life style fiction that I do. For the horror, check out the stories Faceless and Indigo Eyes. And for the other genre I mentioned, Coincidence is the one you'll want to read. That one actually won a top story award on Vocal, my first story ever to do so. I also launched a new article on writing this week. It's about finding your writer's voice, and it's my classic style where I try to have fun, crack jokes, and give you real advice somewhere in there. If you struggle with identifying your style and voice, I'm told it's a great read, and I promise it doesn't sound like some guy trying to sell you an overpriced course. One last thing I'd like to mention from this past week is a funny story about a small Substack that I found, and I of course asked permission to share the story, but it's very funny. The Substack is called Rocky's Thoughts, It currently has about 5 subscribers, but the other day I saw Rocky, the owner of the publication, posting about how they enjoy talking to the Void, and it was clear that they weren't getting a whole lot of engagement or responses on their notes. So, being the supportive dude that I am, I jumped in on one of those posts and I said, "Hey, it's nice to meet you. Here's the thing though, it's actually pronounced Bradley. But a lot of people make that mistake and call me Void, so it's all good. Nice to meet you." And of course, they loved it. I mean, that's a great joke. Let's be honest. But they loved it, and now we have this little inside joke where every time I, comment on one of their pieces or one of their notes or their posts, I always refer to myself as the Void. It's very funny and wholesome, and I thought it was a great example of why this Substack community is so great. You can have interactions like that literally any day of the week. It's amazing. So check out Rocky's latest post on setting realistic goals in the show notes. Next up is our weekly topic of discussion regarding writing, and this week I want to talk about self-promotion. I know, bad word, but how the heck are people going to read your work if you don't promote it? And as people know, I work in marketing, but as many of you know, there's a time and a place for advertising. And by the way, YouTube, it's not in the middle of my horror documentary. You killed the mood. That being said, self-promo isn't bad when it's done right. There are a few ways to go about it. First, when you publish something new, just share it. I usually restack my own post that it auto-generates and add some context about why it's unique or important. Just do that once, and you're fine. Then, when you're around the internet having conversations, if the topic of your work or the subject of your recent piece comes up, just toss it in like you would any conversation. Be like, "Hey, oh, by the way, speaking of, I did this or that, and here's a link." Super easy, and it's not pushy. If you find somebody who's literally asking people to share their recent work, and hear me out on this, drop a link. They're asking. It's all good. And I know people really struggle with this, so I'm trying to kind of just encourage you, right? If you make it natural and don't force it, self-promotion can be fun. It allows you to connect to new readers, other writers, or even make new friends. I'm living proof. As someone who once told me that I talk about my writing too much, allow me to be the first person to say that that's crap. Being passionate about your work is not a crime. It's a good thing. A lot of people don't even have things that they're passionate about. And you know what that does? It makes them angry and bitter. So don't be like them. Embrace your work. Share it when it makes sense. And you'll never have to apologize for that dreaded, shameless self-promotion. Okay? All right, and next up we have our second iteration of Bradley's Substack Soapbox. The section where I rant about something that's really grinding my gears, boiling my noodle, or peeling my potatoes. This week we're talking about the subject of people, not platforms. So in this rant, I want to talk about a post that I saw this week. I had about 2K likes on Substack, and I just spotted it while I was scrolling. I didn't even read the article. I mean, hell, I don't even know if there was an article associated with it. But the post said that Substack's CEO, I don't know their name, said something positive about Musk and Zuck. We all know who they are. I'm not going to go into that. And they said that because the CEO made this comment, now Substack's not a safe haven like we thought it was. Doom, 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 doom. Here's the thing. No. First of all, that's some really nasty clickbait. And secondly, a community is about people, not platforms. It's the people that define the community, who give it a reputation, and who ultimately are the ones that represent it. So what? A CEO said something you don't agree with? Yeah, what else is new? If we jump ship every single time a CEO outed themselves as a giant douchebag, we would never have a home. We need that home as a community, as writers, as people. It's essential. Now, of course, there's limits to this. For example, I recently decided to jump ship from Twitter. And no, I'm not giving that tech bro Hitler the satisfaction of calling it the letter before Y in the alphabet. The place got bad. It lost its community. There was no safe haven left. But that's not what's happening here on Substack, at least not from my perspective. Could it down the road? Maybe. But until then, we all need to fight to protect this virtual home and all of our friends within it. So please, remember, people define a community, not the platform. Please spread the word. All right, in our last section here, next week's focus and goals from my perspective so that you know what's coming up on deck. The next Devine story, as I mentioned, Fate's Witness, should be out today or tomorrow, some point soon. I definitely want to get it out because I have more of those stories to release even after that one, including a brand new one that I wrote that I'm really excited about, but I want to get it locked in the right order so that you're kind of experiencing the elements of the world. But of course, somebody might read it out of order and that's fine too. In this upcoming story, Fate's Witness, we get our first glimpse into the extinction of the elves. It stars Felwyn Sagestar, who stands accused of unleashing a force known as the Rot, that threatens to devour the elven home and all of its people. I'm also hoping to bring over some more horror this week from Vocal, where it's currently published, and keep in mind these stories, when they're republished on Substack, they get revisions, they get expansions, they get cuts, they get new images, it's a whole thing. So I'm not just copying and pasting my old work here, this is definitely an improved version. That being said, most of my horror stories are part of the same connected universe, so if you read Indigo Eyes, look out for a story coming out in the next week called The Forbidden Resurrection. That one's also connected, and I would love to know if you spot those differences and similarities. Another goal for me is I really want to get back to my novel this week. It's called For Those About to Vote. It's a cosmic horror set in the near future where humanity, after destroying a planet-killer asteroid in orbit, realizes that we've unleashed an alien parasite. It infects people and lies dormant until it decides to use their body to spread itself, making every infected person a ticking time bomb. And one last thing. If you haven't subscribed to the Soulful Poetry Collective, please do. It's a new poetry group I started with a writer here on Substack named Mary Ellen, and our first newsletter and poetry challenge is coming out soon. Check the show notes for a link to the publication. I also might do Flash Fiction February this year. It was a great source of inspiration, and as I mentioned in my Writing Voice article, I love prompts. So if I find a good source for prompts in February and I decide to take on the challenge, I'll let y'all know. And that's it for now. Maybe next week we'll do a 1K subscriber special. Who knows? I mean, I have no idea at this point. But at this rate, it's all good, and I love all the growth, and I really appreciate it. And I'll tell you this. I appreciate you all so, so, so much. And I hope you have a wonderful and productive week of writing. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off.